Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am MK Jabintaj. Today in this video I am giving you the knowledge about the third module of the subject Computer Networks and Security for 5th SEM CBCS CSC VTU students. I am dedicating this video to all the students all over the world. Now let us see third module third module network layer. Structure of a router. High-level view of generic router architecture is as shown below. 4 router components can be identified. See the figure here. Input ports. An input port performs several key functions. It performs the physical layer function of terminating an incoming physical link at a router. An input port also performs link layer functions needed to interoperate with the link layer at the other side of the incoming link. The lookup function is also performed at the input port. Forwarding table is consulted to determine the router output port to which an arriving packet will be forwarded via the switching fabric. The switching fabric connects the router's input ports to its output port. An output port stores packets received from the switching fabric and transmits these packets on the outgoing link by performing the necessary link layer and the physical layer functions. Routing processor. The routing processor executes the routing protocols, maintains routing tables and attached link state information, and computes the forwarding table for the router. It also performs the network management functions. And router's input ports, output ports and switching fabric router implement the forwarding function and are almost always implemented in hardware. These forwarding functions are sometimes collectively referred to as router forwarding plane, router control plane. Functions are usually implemented in software and execute on the router processor. See the figure. Input processing. The input ports line termination function and link layer processing implement the physical and the link layers for that individual input link. The lookup performed in the input port is central to the router's operation. It is here that the router uses the forwarding table to look up the output port to which an arriving packet will be forwarded via the switching fabric. The forwarding table is computed and updated by the routing processor with a shadow copy typically stored at each input port. The forwarding table is copied from the routing processor to the line cards over a separate bus. Once a packet's output port has been determined via the lookup, the packet can be sent into the switching fabric. In some designs, a packet may be temporarily blocked from entering the switching fabric. If packets from other input ports are currently using the fabric, a blocked packet will be queued at the input port and then scheduled to cross the fabric at a later point in time. Switching. The switching fabric switches the packet from an input port to an output port. Switching can be accomplished in the number of ways. Switching via memory. The simplest earliest routers were traditional computers with switching between input and output ports being done under direct control of the CPU routing processor. Input and output ports functioned as traditional input-output devices in a traditional operating system. An input port with an arriving packet first signaled the routing processor via an interrupt. The packet was then copied from the input port into processor memory. The routing processor then extracted the destination address from the header, looked up the appropriate output port in the following table and copied the packet to the output port's buffers. Here, two packets cannot be forwarded at the same time even if they have different destination ports, since only one memory read or write over the shared system bus can be done at a time. Many modern routers switch via memory. A major difference from early router is that the lookup of the destination address and the storing of the packet into the appropriate memory location are performed by processing on the input line cards. Switching via bus. In this approach, an input port transfers a packet directly to the output port over a shared bus without intervention by the routing processor. This is typically done by having the input port prepend a switch internal label header to the packet indicating the local output port to which this packet is being transferred and transmitting the packet onto the bus. The packet is received by all output ports, but only the port that matches the label will keep the packet. The label is then removed at the output port as this label is only used within the switch to cross the bus. If multiple packets arrive to the router at the same time, each at a different input port, all but one must wait since only one packet can cross the bus at a time. See the figure. Switching via an interconnection network. One way to overcome the bandwidth limitation of a single shared bus is to use a more sophisticated interconnection network such as those that have been used in the past to interconnect processors in multiprocessor computer architecture. A crossbar switch is an interconnection network consisting of 2n buses that connect n input ports to n output ports. Each vertical bus intersects each horizontal bus at a cross point which can be opened or closed at any time by the switch fabric. See the figure here. When a packet arrives from port A and needs to be forwarded to port Y, the switch controller closes the cross point at the intersection of buses A and Y, and port A then sends the packet onto its bus, which is picked up only by bus Y. Note that a packet from port B can be forwarded to port X at the same time since the A to Y and B to X packets use different input and output buses. Thus, unlike the previous two switching approaches, crossbar networks are capable of forwarding multiple packets in the parallel. However, if two packets from two different input ports are destined to the same output port, then one will have to wait at the time since only one packet can be sent over any given bus at a time. Output processing. Output port processing takes packets that have been stored in the output port's memory and transmits them over the output link. This includes selecting and dequeuing packets for the transmission and performing the needed link layer and physical layer transmission functions. See the figure. Queuing. Packet queues may form at both the input ports and output ports. The location and extent of queuing will depend on the traffic load, the relative speed of the switching fabric, and the line speed. When many packets arrive from same source at a faster rate than switching rate, queuing at input ports occur. When many packets are destined towards the same output port, queuing at output port occurs. See the figure here. A consequence of output port queuing is that a packet scheduler at the output port must choose one packet among those queued for transmission. Many packet scheduling algorithms like first come first served scheduling, priority queuing, fair queuing, or more sophisticated scheduling disciplines such as weighted fair queuing is available. Packet scheduling plays a crucial role in providing quality of service guarantees. Similarly, if there is not enough memory to buffer an incoming packet, a decision must be made to either drop the arriving packet, a policy known as drop tail, or remove one or more already queued packets to make room for the newly arrived packet. In some cases, it may be advantageous to drop or mark the header of a packet before the buffer is full in order to provide a congestion signal to the sender. A number of packet dropping and marking policies which collectively have become known as active queuing management AQM algorithm have been proposed and analyzed. One of the most widely studied and implemented AQM algorithms is the random early detection algorithm. Under red, a weighted average is maintained for the length of the output queue. If the average queue length is less than a minimum threshold min th, when a packet arrives, the packet is admitted to the queue. Conversely, if the queue is full or the average queue length is greater than a maximum threshold max th, when a packet arrives, the packet is marked or dropped. Finally, if the packet arrives to find an average queue length in the interval min th, max th, the packet is marked or dropped with a probability that is typically some function of the average queue length min th and max th. Consider the following scenario. Suppose that in the below figure the switch fabric chooses to transfer the packet from the front of the upper left queue. In this case, the darkly shaded packet in the lower left queue must wait, but not only must this darkly shaded packet wait, so too must the lightly shaded packet that is queued behind that packet in the lower left queue. Even though there is no contention for the middle right output port, the destination for the lightly shaded packet, this phenomena is known as head of the line hole blocking. See the figures here. Now let us see the Internet protocol. Internet addressing and forwarding are important components of the Internet protocol. There are two versions of IP in use today, IPv4 and IPv6. Datagram format. See the figure. Version number. These 4 bits specify the IP protocol version of the datagram. Header length, because an IPv4 diagram can contain a variable number of options. These 4 bits specify the total header bytes. Type of service. The type of service bits were included in the IPv4 header to allow different types of IP datagrams. For example, datagrams particularly requiring low delay, high throughput or reliability to be distinguished from each other. Datagram length. This is the total length of the IP datagram header plus data measured in the bytes. Identification. This field represents identification number assigned to related fragments. Flag. There are 3 flags. First bit is unused, second bit is do not fragment bit. If this bit is set, intermediate nodes should not perform fragmentation. Last bit is more fragment bit. More fragment bit represents more fragments to follow after this. Fragmentation offset. Starting byte of the fragment in multiple of 8 bytes. Time to live. The time to live TTL field is included to ensure that datagrams do not circulate forever in the network. It represents hope limit. Protocol represents the upper layer protocol. 6 for TCP and 17 for UDP. Header checksum field is used for error detection. Source and destination IP addresses represent 32-bit source and destination IP address. Option. The options field allow an IP header to be extended. It allows to include additional functionalities. Data payload represents the data that has to be transmitted. Now let us see IP datagram fragmentation. The maximum amount of data that a link layer frame can carry is called the maximum transmission unit. Because each IP datagram is encapsulated within the link layer frame for transport from one router to the next router, the MTU of the link layer protocol places a hard limit on the length of an IP datagram. IP datagram is divided into smaller packets according to MTU. These smaller packets are called fragments and the process is called fragmentation. Fragments need to be reassembled before they reach the transport layer at the destination. Receiver needs to reassemble all the fragments belonging to the same original IP datagram in order to identify all the related fragments. Identification field is used. There are three flags. First bit is unused. Second bit is do not fragment bit. If this bit is set, intermediate nodes should not perform fragmentation. Last bit is more fragment bit. More fragment bit represents more fragments to follow after this. In order for the destination host to determine whether a fragment is missing, the offset field is used to specify where the fragment fits within the original IP datagram. Example, a datagram of 4000 bytes arrives at a router and must be forwarded to a link with an MTU of 1500 bytes. This implies that the 3980 data bytes in the original datagram must be allocated to three separate fragments. Suppose that the original datagram is stamped with an identification number of 777. Following table shows the fragmentation. See the table here. At the destination, the payload of the datagram is passed through the transport layer only after the IP layer has fully reconstructed the original IP datagram. If one or more of the fragments does not arrive at the destination, the incomplete datagram is discarded and not passed to the transport layer. IPv4 addressing. Each IP address is 32 bits long and there are thus a total of 232 possible IP addresses. Approximately there are about 4 million possible IP addresses. IP addresses are typically written in so-called dotted decimal notation, in which each byte of the address is written in its decimal form and is separated by a period from other bytes in the address. Example 193.32.216.9. The address 193.32.216.9 is a binary notation. In binary notation is 11000001 00100000 11011000000001. Each interface on every host and router in the global internet must have an IP address that is globally unique. IP address has two parts, network ID and host ID. Network ID is used to identify the network and the host ID is used to identify the host in the network. The network can be divided into smaller sub-networks called subnets. Initially, IP address was divided into 5 classes. We call this as classful addressing. It leads to the shortage of IP address. Now, classless inter-domain routing CIDR addressing is used. In CIDR, IP address is represented as A.B.C.D bar x, where x represents number of bits used for network ID. See the example here. If 256 hosts are there, last 8 bit is allocated to host ID, remaining 24 bit is allocated to network ID. Here bar x value is bar 24. Below figure shows the subnetting. See the figure. Dynamic host configuration protocol. Once an organization has obtained a block of addresses, it can assign individual IP addresses to the host and the router interfaces in its organization. A system administrator will typically manually configure the IP addresses into the host addresses can also be configured manually, but more than this task is now done using the dynamic host configuration protocol. Dynamic host configuration protocol allows a host to obtain be allocated an IP address automatically. DHCP works over UDP with port number of 67. DHCP involves 4 steps. First is DHCP server discovery. Host broadcast DHCP discovery message with a source address 0.0.0.0 and destination address 255.255.255.255. Second one is DHCP server offers a DHCP server receiving and DHCP discover message response to the client with a DHCP offer message that is broadcast to all nodes on the subnet, again using the IP broadcast address of 255.255.255.255. DHCP request. The newly arriving client will choose from among one or more server offers and responds to its selected offer with a DHCP request message. A DHCP acknowledge ACK. The server responds to the DHCP request message with an DHCP acknowledge message confirming the requested parameters. See the figure here. Network address translation NAT. Private IP addresses shown below are used inside company, campus, organization or home network. 10.0.0.0 to 10.255.255.255, 171.16.0.0 to 171.31.255.255, 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.255.255. But company or campus or organization or home network connects to the internal through global IP addresses. To convert from private IP addresses to global IP address and vice versa, NAT is used. NAT can be illustrated with the following diagram. See the diagram here. The host is IP 10.0.0.1 sends the IP datagram with source address port number 10.0.0.1 345 and destination address port number 128.119.40.186.186, 80. NAT router maintains a NAT table as shown above. NAT router makes an entry in its table and replaces the source IP address with global IP address 138.76.29.7 and port number 5001 and send it to destination. When the response comes from destination, the global IP address will be replaced by private IP address according to the entry available in a NAT table. Then the message is delivered to the appropriate host. UPnP. NAT traversal is increasingly provided by the universal plug and play, which is a protocol that allows a host to discover and configure a nearby NAT. UPnP requires that both the host and the NAT be UPnP compatible. With UPnP, an application running in a host can request a NAT mapping between its private IP address private port number and the public IP address public port number for some requested public port number. If the NAT accepts the request and creates the mapping, then nodes from the outside can initiate TCP connections to public IP address, public port number. Furthermore, UPnP lets the application know the value of public IP address, public port number, so that the application can advertise it to the outside world. Internet Control Message Protocol ICMP. ICMP is used by hosts and routers to communicate network layer information to each other. The most typical use of ICMP is for error reporting. ICMP is a part of IP, but architecturally it lies just above IP. Hence, ICMP messages are carried inside IP datagrams. That is, ICMP messages are carried as IP payload, just as TCP or UDP segments are carried as IP payload. ICMP messages have a type and code field and contain the header and first 8 bytes of the IP datagram that caused the ICMP message to be generated in the first place. Popular ICMP messages are listed below. See the table. The well-known Ping program sends an ICMP type 8 code 0 message to the specified host. The destination host, seeing the echoed request, sends back a type 0 code 0 ICMP echo reply. Congested router send an ICMP source sequence message to a host to force that host to reduce its transmission rate. IPv6 datagram format. See the figure. The most important changes introduced in IPv6 are expanded addressing capabilities. IPv6 increases the size of the IP addresses from 32 to 128 bits. A streamlined 40-byte header, 40 bytes of mandatory header is used in IPv6, whereas IPv4 uses 20 bytes of mandatory header. Flow labeling and priority. Flow label refers to the labeling of packets belonging to particular flow for which the sender requests special handling, such as a non-default quality of the service or real-time service. The IPv6 header also has a 8-bit traffic class field. This field, like the TOS field is IPv4, can be used to give priority to certain datagrams within a flow. The following fields are defined in IPv6 version. The 4-bit field identifies the IP version number traffic class. This 8-bit field specifies priority. Flow label. This 20-bit field is used to identify a flow of datagrams. Payload length. This 16-bit value is treated as an unassigned integer, giving the number of bytes in the IPv6 datagram following the fixed length 40-byte datagram header. Next header. This field identifies the next following header. Hop limit. The contents of this field are decremented by one each router that forwards the datagram. If the hop limit count reaches 0, the datagram is discarded. Source and destination addresses. 128-bit IPv6 address data. This is the payload portion of the IPv6 datagram. Following fields appearing in the IPv4 datagram are no longer present in the IPv6 datagram. Fragmentation or reassembly. IPv6 does not allow for fragmentation and reassembly at intermediate routers. These operations can be performed only by the source and destination. If an IPv6 datagram received by a router is too large to be forwarded over the outgoing link, the router simply drops the datagram and sends a packet to big ICMP error message. See the below back to the sender. The sender can then resend the data using a smaller IP datagram. Header checksum. Because the transport layer and the link layer protocols in the internet layers perform checksumming. The designers of IP probably felt that this functionality was sufficiently redundant in the network layer that it could be removed. Options and options field is no longer a part of the standard IP header. Instead of option field, extension headers are used. Transitioning from IPv4 to IPv6. Dual stack. Here IPv6 nodes also have a complete IPv4 implementation. Such a node has the ability to send and receive both IPv4 and IPv6 datagrams when interoperating with an IPv4 node. An IPv6 or IPv4 node can use IPv4 datagrams when incorporating with the IPv6 node. It can speak IPv6. IPv6 or IPv4 nodes must have both IPv6 and IPv4 addresses. They must furthermore be able to determine whether another node is IPv6 capable or IPv4 only. In the dual stack approach, if either the sender or the receiver is only IPv4 capable, an IPv4 datagram must be used. As a result, it is possible that two IPv6 capable nodes can end up in essence sending IPv4 datagrams to each other. See the figure. For example, suppose node A is IPv6 capable and wants to send IP datagram to node F, which is also IPv6 capable. Nodes A and B can exchange an IPv6 datagram. However, node B must create an IPv4 datagram to send to C. Certainly, the data field of the IPv6 datagram can be copied into the data field of IPv4 datagram and appropriate address mapping can be done. However, in performing the conversion from IPv6 to IPv4, there will be the IPv6 specific fields in the IPv6 datagram that have no counterpart in IPv4. The information in these fields will be lost. Thus, even though E and F can exchange IPv6 datagrams, the arriving IPv4 datagrams at E from the D do not contain all of the fields that were in the original IPv6 datagram sent to A. Now let us see tunneling. Tunneling can solve the problem noted above. The basic idea behind tunneling is the following. Suppose two IPv6 nodes want to interoperate using IPv6 datagrams but are connected to each other by intervening IPv4 routers. We refer to the intervening set of IPv4 routers between two IPv6 routers as tunnel. With tunneling, the IPv6 node on the sending side of the tunnel takes the entire IPv6 datagram and puts it in the data payload field of an IPv4 datagram. See the figure. IP security. IP security is the security protocol used for IPsec is the security protocol used for IP security. The services provided by an IPsec session include cryptographic segment mechanisms that allow the two communicating hosts to agree on cryptographic algorithms and keys. Encryption of IP datagram payloads. When the sending host receives a segment from the transport layer, IPsec encrypts the payload. The payload can only be decrypted by IPsec in the receiving host. Data integrity. IPsec allows the receiving host to verify the datagram's header fields and encrypted payload were not modified while the datagram was en route from source to destination. Origin authentication. When a host receives an IPsec datagram from a trusted source, the host is assured that the source IP address in the datagram is the actual source of the datagram.